We were standing at the altar practicing our vows. Everyone was laughing, taking pictures, sipping sweet tea in the North Carolina heat. I had just finished repeating the lines Silas and I had written together when his mother walked over to me. Morella Creighton. Elegant, always put together, a little cold. She smiled like she was about to compliment my dress or offer some advice. Instead, she leaned in and said quietly, "I'm glad he chose you this time." I thought I misheard her. This time? She gave the smallest nod. "The last one looked just like you." That hit strange. A joke, maybe. I forced a smile and asked, "What happened to her?" Morella didn't blink. She leaned in closer, lowered her voice, and said, "He never let her leave." Something in her eyes told me she wasn't exaggerating or playing around. She looked relieved to say it, like she'd been holding that truth in for years. But what she said next, words she whispered like a warning, made my stomach drop and my feet move on their own. I didn't wait for the wedding. I didn't wait to tell my family. I ran straight to the police. And that was the moment everything unraveled. I always imagined the day before my wedding would be chaotic in a beautiful way. People running around with flowers, someone crying over something sentimental, laughter echoing through the venue. And honestly, that's how it started. Our wedding rehearsal was held at a rustic venue tucked into the trees just outside Asheville, North Carolina. It was a converted barn with big windows, old oak beams, and soft white drapes tied back to let the summer air flow through. It smelled like wildflowers and wood polish. For the first few hours, everything felt exactly like I had hoped it would. I was marrying Silas Creighton, a man who seemed to check every box. He was successful in his career, ran his own construction company, and had a steady, calming presence that drew people to him. He was attentive, remembered little details, never raised his voice. We'd been together for 3 years, and not once had he made me question his intentions. He wasn't loud or flashy. He had this quiet confidence, like he always knew what to say without overthinking it. I met him through work when his company renovated the library where I taught, and we just clicked. My family adored him. My mom, Delia, cried the first time she saw us holding hands. My dad, Cade, a retired firefighter with a no-nonsense attitude, actually joked with Silas, which he rarely did with anyone. My sister, Lona, who never liked any of my exes, had no complaints, though she did mention she couldn't find much about him online. At the time, I brushed it off. Silas didn't like social media. He said he preferred to live in the real world, and I liked that about him. Lona was my maid of honor. She's younger than me by 4 years, but somehow always felt older in spirit. She's sharp, observant, and doesn't let her guard down easily. She kept saying the same thing in the weeks leading up to the wedding. If you're happy, I'm happy. But I could tell she was watching closely. She always watched closely. My grandpa, Russell, Pop, we all called him, was a retired detective. Tall, silver-haired, with a kind face and serious eyes. He always told me, "People will tell you who they are if you listen closely enough." He wasn't the type to insert himself into things unless he felt something was off. That day, he was smiling, holding my hand before I walked down the aisle for practice, and he said, "You look like your mama on her wedding day, beautiful and a little nervous." I told him I was more excited than anything. I believed that. I had spent months planning this wedding. I had a folder full of fabric swatches, emails, timelines, and Pinterest boards. I picked every flower myself, chose the menu, even wrote my own vows. I wanted everything to be perfect because I believed I was stepping into something real and lasting. Then there was Morella, Silas's mother. From the beginning, I didn't quite know how to read her. She was always polite but distant. She wore tailored dresses, expensive perfume, and rarely smiled. At first, I thought she didn't like me, but she was never unkind, just watchful, like she was holding something back. At the rehearsal, she stayed mostly on the sidelines, watching from her chair, sipping iced tea slowly, hands folded neatly in her lap. She barely interacted with my family, but when she did, she smiled a practiced smile, said a few nice words, then drifted back to her seat. She didn't hug me when she arrived. She complimented my dress once, flatly, and asked if the ceremony would run long. It was subtle, but I felt something uneasy in her presence, the kind of thing you feel before you understand it. During the rehearsal dinner, things felt warmer again. My dad made a toast. Lona told a story that made everyone laugh until they cried. Silas's best friend, Jory, gave a toast that I remember now only because it felt out of place. He raised his glass and said, "To second chances and new beginnings, right, man?" He clapped Silas on the back and Silas just smiled. I didn't think about it then, but that was the first time I saw him hesitate before laughing. I remember standing near the arbor, the one Silas helped build for the wedding, watching the sky turn golden. I remember holding my bouquet and practicing my steps. I remember how happy my mom looked, how proud my dad seemed, and how Pop kept watching Silas when he thought no one noticed. I also remember that strange feeling in my stomach that started sometime between the toasts and the rehearsal walk. A weight. Not dread, not yet, but something I couldn't explain. I told myself it was normal. Nerves. The kind you get when your life is about to change. I had no reason to be afraid. Until Morella pulled me aside. Until she looked me in the eye and said those 7 words that broke everything open. "I'm glad he chose you this time." And in that instant, I knew this wasn't the beginning of a love story. It was the start of something much darker. She said it so casually. "I'm glad he chose you this time." Like it was nothing. Like she wasn't dropping a bomb into my chest. At first, I thought I misunderstood her. Maybe she meant he had finally chosen to settle down. I gave a small laugh and asked, "This time?" Morella's expression didn't change. She nodded once. "The last one looked just like you." A cold prickling crawled down my spine. My first thought was that she was mistaken, or maybe even being weirdly nostalgic. People say strange things when emotions are high. But then I asked the question that still echoes in my head. What happened to her? Morella leaned in, close enough that I could smell the sharp scent of her perfume. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He never let her leave. The way she said it, calm and deliberate, made it impossible to laugh it off. Her eyes didn't flicker. She wasn't being dramatic or sarcastic. She was telling me something, warning me. And I felt it in my bones. I stood there frozen. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. She gave me a tight smile, then turned and walked back toward the table like she'd just mentioned the weather. I looked around at everyone else, laughing, hugging, smiling, and I felt completely alone. I told myself not to panic. I told myself I'd misread the whole thing. Maybe she was talking about a high school sweetheart. Maybe "never let her leave" was a weird way of saying he was heartbroken. But no matter how many explanations I tried to give myself, they all felt hollow. I couldn't shake the feeling in my stomach, the way her voice had landed like a stone in the middle of a still lake. Something wasn't right. I found my sister, Lona, helping Mom organize centerpieces. I pulled her aside and told her exactly what Morella had said. I expected her to laugh or at least roll her eyes, but she didn't. She looked at me, serious. "Okay, that's not normal. She actually said that?" I nodded. Every word. Lona bit her lip and looked toward where Morella was standing. "I told you I couldn't find anything about Silas before 2019. No Facebook, no LinkedIn, nothing. He just appears." I knew Lona had a habit of digging into people's digital pasts, and I used to tease her about it. Now I was grateful for it. "What do you mean, appears?" I asked. She pulled out her phone and opened her notes. "Everything I've ever found about him starts around the time you met. It's like the person he was before that doesn't exist." I felt my throat tighten. "You think she was telling the truth?" "I think she was scared," Lona said, "and I think you need to talk to Pop." I found Pop sitting near the edge of the patio, sipping a glass of sweet tea. I sat beside him and told him what Morella had said. He didn't react right away. He just watched her from a distance. After a long pause, he said, "She's not lying." "You don't even know what she meant," I said. "No," he said quietly, "but I know the look of someone carrying something too heavy for too long. And I've seen that woman wear it on her face since the day I met her." Pop leaned forward. "I don't want to scare you, but if there's even a chance that something is off with Silas, we need to be sure. Not after the wedding. Now." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. This was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. But instead, I was sitting in the middle of my own rehearsal dinner, wondering if the man I was about to marry had hurt someone, maybe worse. We decided not to confront Silas yet. Pop said we needed something solid before making a move. That night, after the guests left, Lona and I sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom with our laptops, digging. We searched old news archives, local missing persons reports, anything that could connect Silas to someone who looked like me. For hours, we found nothing. Then Lona froze. "Look at this." She turned her screen toward me. It was a small news article from 5 years ago. The headline read, "Asheville woman reported missing after leaving school job." The article mentioned a woman named Serena Lark, 29, described as kind, dependable, loved her job. Last seen leaving work after a Friday staff meeting, never made it home. The photo showed her standing in front of a classroom, smiling. Long brown hair, soft features, hazel eyes. She looked like me. I felt my breath catch. Lona looked at me. "You can't tell me that's a coincidence." Pop called one of his old contacts from the department and asked about the case. The details were vague, but what stuck out was that Serena had recently started seeing someone. No name was given, no photos. The boyfriend was never identified. Silas had moved to Asheville 6 years ago. That's what he told me, that he relocated to start over. He never talked much about his past, just said he wanted to look forward, not back. I thought that made him mature. Now I wondered if it made him dangerous. I didn't know what scared me more. The idea that Serena Lark might have been his ex, or the possibility that Morella's warning was the only thing keeping me from becoming the next version of her. I barely slept that night. My mind kept circling back to that photo of Serena Lark. Her smile, her eyes, the shape of her face. It was like looking into a mirror. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing in my wedding dress instead of me. I couldn't stop wondering if she'd ever stood where I stood. If she'd written vows, if she had parents waiting to walk her down the aisle, if she ever saw the warning signs, and if she did, whether anyone listened. By morning, I wasn't thinking about floral arrangements or whether the groomsmen's ties matched. I was thinking about escape plans. I was thinking about how close I had come to marrying someone I might not really know. Pop came into the kitchen around 6. He didn't say good morning. He looked at me and said, "We need to go to the cabin." Silas had mentioned it only once. A weekend retreat he'd bought before we met deep in the woods, about an hour outside the city. He never invited me there. Said it was falling apart, needed too much work, not worth the drive. I didn't press it. I trusted him. I used to think that was a good thing. Pop and I didn't tell anyone where we were going, not even Lona. We didn't want to cause panic until we knew something for sure. I texted Silas and told him I was out with my mom, getting last-minute things for the big day. He replied with a heart emoji and said he couldn't wait to see me at the altar. That message sat in my phone like a lie wrapped in ribbon. The road to the cabin got narrower the farther we drove. Trees closed in. Sunlight filtered through the branches, but the air felt heavier out there. We passed no signs, no houses, just woods and gravel and silence. When we pulled up to the cabin, it looked abandoned. The roof sagged slightly. The shutters hung crooked. The front door was locked, but Pop had brought tools. Within minutes, we were inside. It was dark and dusty, with furniture covered in sheets. The air smelled like mildew and something faintly metallic. I walked through slowly, my heart pounding with every step. The kitchen had unopened cans on the shelves. A bedroom in the back held an unmade bed, stained mattress, no personal touches, no photos, no warmth, just utility. I was starting to think maybe we had made a mistake, that this was just an old cabin, forgotten and neglected, until we found the basement door. It was in the hallway, half hidden behind a coat rack. A deadbolt locked it from the outside. Pop gave me a look before pulling it open. The stairs creaked as we went down. The basement was cold and dim, the air stale. There were no windows, just concrete walls and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I saw an old couch, a rusted sink, and then something that made my breath catch. Chains. Bolted into the wall, thick metal cuffs at the ends, scratches on the floor, deep ones, like something or someone had been dragged. I walked closer and saw what looked like dried blood along the baseboards. And then, near the far wall, a mirror, cracked down the center. In red lipstick, smeared and faded but still legible, 3 words were written across the glass. "I'm still here." I stepped back, my hands shaking. Pop didn't say anything for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone and called his contact at the police department. "I need a unit out here now. Bring a forensic team. This is not a drill." I stood there in silence, staring at the mirror, at the message someone had left behind. It was the kind of thing you see in movies. But this wasn't a movie. This was real. And I had almost walked down the aisle with a man who may have locked someone down here. Maybe worse. When the officers arrived, they asked me questions. I answered what I could. They taped off the house and started searching the grounds. An hour later, one of the detectives approached Pop with a pale face. "There's something buried behind the cabin," he said. "We're going to need a full team out here. This looks bad." We left the cabin in silence. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I already knew the answer to the one that mattered. Morella wasn't warning me out of cruelty or confusion. She was trying to save me. And maybe, in her own twisted way, she'd done what she couldn't bring herself to do years ago. She spoke up, finally. The ride home felt like floating. I stared out the window, watching the trees blur together. When we reached the driveway, I still didn't know how I would tell my family. I still didn't know what I would say to Silas. But I knew I wasn't marrying him. That decision had already been made. I had one job now, to protect myself and the people I loved. I had trusted my gut, and it had led me to the truth, a horrible, ugly truth. But the truth all the same. I wasn't just walking away from a wedding. I was walking away from something much more dangerous, something I never saw coming. When we pulled back into the driveway, everything looked normal. My mom was setting out mason jars with floating candles. My dad was fixing the edge of a folding table. Lona was inside reviewing the music playlist for the reception. No one knew the truth yet. No one knew that only an hour ago I had been standing in a basement that may have held a woman prisoner, that police officers were now digging through the dirt behind an abandoned cabin, looking for her body. I walked through the front door, and the scent of fresh flowers hit me like a punch. It was all so beautiful. Too beautiful for what was about to happen. Lona met me at the kitchen table. "Where were you?" I took her hand and pulled her into the laundry room. I closed the door and told her everything. The chains, the mirror, the message, the buried site behind the cabin. I told her the police were still out there. Her face went completely still. "I knew something was wrong," she said. "I didn't know it was this bad." We heard voices outside. Silas had arrived. I hadn't planned what I was going to say to him. I didn't know if I should run, hide, or confront him, but Pop told me to wait. "Let the police handle him," he said. "You've already done your part." Silas came in through the back door with a smile. He was carrying a suit bag and a box of monogrammed cufflinks I had ordered for him weeks ago. He looked relaxed, excited, like he had no idea what was coming. He saw me and kissed my forehead. "Morning, love. You disappear on me." I forced a nod. My whole body felt like it was holding its breath. A few minutes later, a pair of unmarked police cars pulled up. Uniformed officers stepped out first, followed by 2 detectives. My dad walked toward them, confused. My mom stood frozen by the flower arch. Silas stepped outside and looked toward the cars. He turned to me, still calm. "What's going on?" The lead detective approached him with a firm voice. "Silas Creighton, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice and suspicion of involvement in a missing persons case. Put your hands where I can see them." Silas didn't argue. He didn't yell or demand answers. He slowly raised his hands and said, "This is a mistake." They handcuffed him on the lawn in front of everyone. Guests began to arrive early, and I watched from the porch as the man I was supposed to marry was led to a police cruiser. He looked back at me once. No panic, just a small shake of the head, like he was disappointed in me. Inside the house, the silence was heavier than any scream. My mom sat on the couch with her hand over her mouth. My dad paced, fists clenched. Lona hovered by my side, never letting go of my arm. Pop made a call to his friend on the force and got an update. They found human remains buried behind the cabin. A woman. DNA results would take time, but based on the age, description, and condition, they believed it was Serena Lark. It was real, all of it. That night, I sat at the edge of my bed, holding the dress I was supposed to wear. It didn't feel like mine anymore. Nothing did. I thought of Serena, of how she might have smiled the way I did, how she might have written vows, planned her life, trusted a man who wasn't what he seemed. I thought of Morella. Her words had sounded cold, but now I realized they came from guilt. She had watched her son destroy someone's life and said nothing, until she saw it happening again. She couldn't stop him back then, but maybe she thought she could stop him this time. I didn't know if she deserved forgiveness, but I understood now why she whispered those words. It wasn't cruelty, it was regret. Later that week, the police found more evidence at the cabin. Journal pages, notes, drawings, pieces of Serena's life, hidden and fragmented. They confirmed the remains were hers. Silas was charged with murder, unlawful imprisonment, and several other felonies. His trial would take months, but the case was strong. I never saw him again. I canceled the wedding, returned every gift, and sent handwritten notes to every guest. I didn't explain what happened. I couldn't. There weren't words for it. But people talk. They always do. Eventually, everyone knew. For a long time, I felt ashamed. Not because of what happened, but because I hadn't seen it coming. Because I had stood next to him and called it love. Because I had written vows to a man who could hurt someone like that and hide it behind a smile. But over time, that shame changed into something else. Not strength, exactly, but awareness, caution, fire. I had been lucky, luckier than Serena, and I would never ignore my instincts again. The morning after what was supposed to be my wedding, I woke up to the sound of birds outside my window. The same window I had looked out of as a teenager, wondering who I'd grow up to become, who I'd marry, where life would take me. I never imagined I would wake up in that room at 28, sitting in a wedding dress that would never be worn, trying to piece together the truth about a man I thought I knew. My mother brought me tea. She didn't say much, just sat beside me and held my hand. My dad came in later, quiet as ever, but I noticed he didn't let go of my shoulder for the longest time. My sister stayed close, constantly checking in, keeping the rest of the world away from me until I was ready to face it. I spent the next few weeks sorting through the emotional wreckage. The police came by with updates. Silas had been denied bail. Investigators had found receipts, journal entries, and camera footage from a gas station near the cabin that placed him there the day Serena Lark went missing. Morella eventually gave a full statement. She admitted she had known something was wrong. She suspected Silas had done something terrible, but convinced herself that silence was safer. When I entered the picture and reminded her of Serena, she panicked. She knew the pattern was starting again. That's why she spoke, because guilt finally outweighed fear. The town whispered for a while. People stared when I went to the grocery store. A few of the wedding guests reached out gently, offering support. Others kept their distance, unsure of what to say. I didn't blame them. Most people don't know how to react when the fairy tale turns out to be a warning sign. I started going to therapy. At first, I sat there for entire sessions, unable to say anything except that I felt stupid. My therapist, a woman named Erin, looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're not stupid. You survived. That matters." It took time, but I believed her. I also started journaling again, writing down what I remembered, how I felt when I first met Silas, what I noticed, what I ignored. It wasn't just to process the trauma. It was to rebuild trust in myself. For a while, I had believed that my instincts were broken, that I couldn't tell good from evil, but that wasn't true. Something in me had reacted the moment Morella said those words. I listened. I asked questions. I ran when it mattered. That wasn't weakness. That was survival. A few months later, I visited Serena's family. I didn't know what to expect. I had written them a letter, and they invited me to come meet them at their home just outside Asheville. Her mother hugged me before I even reached the front porch. Her father held my hand for a long time and said, "Thank you for not letting this go." They showed me photos of Serena, her graduation, her dog, a birthday party in their backyard. We cried together. We didn't talk much about Silas. We didn't have to. The focus was on Serena, on the life that was stolen from her, on how important it was that she was found, that she was seen, that she mattered. After that, I started volunteering at a local support group for women who had survived emotionally abusive relationships. I didn't share my full story at first. I just listened. Eventually, when the time felt right, I told them what happened. Not to shock anyone, but to let them know that instincts are real and they matter, and that anyone can be fooled. Even strong, educated, loving people, even me. One of the women in the group told me that hearing my story made her finally leave a man who had been controlling every part of her life. That was the moment I stopped asking why this had happened to me and started asking what I could do with it. I no longer believe in fairy tales. I believe in hard truths, quiet courage, and the power of paying attention to what doesn't feel right. I believe that silence protects the wrong people, and that one whispered sentence, spoken at the right time, can change everything. What Morella said to me at the rehearsal was strange, uncomfortable, and out of place, but it saved my life. Not because she was brave or bold, but because she spoke, and I listened. To this day, I don't know how many others Silas might have hurt. I don't know what would have happened if I had married him. I try not to imagine it. Instead, I remind myself of this. I got out. I found the truth. And I made sure the truth found its way to everyone else who needed it. That's what mattered in the end. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, and it definitely wasn't easy to live through. But if it helps even one person trust their instincts, ask that one extra question, or walk away when something feels wrong, then sharing it was worth it. If this story moved you or made you think, please take a second to like the video, share it with someone you care about, and leave a comment below. I read them, and your words matter more than you know. And if you want more real stories like this, stories that are raw, honest, and sometimes difficult but always true, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. You never know when someone else's story might end up helping you tell your own. Take care of yourselves and trust your gut, always.